Ready to go as always. Tangling and untangling my net of headphones so that I can hear Jim once I start the broadcast here, start the live stream. I'm sure Jim is probably doing like I was and continuing to transcribe from Pitt's training, first day of training camp and media day today. I think probably combined. I'll have to ask him for his final count, but I did. Let's see if I can figure out how many interviews today. Well, I think the first one from today here on the phone, you can see was recording number 41, and we went from 41 all the way up to 58. So check my math, but I believe that's 18 recorded interviews. I'm sure Jim is right around that same number as well. It's a Panther-Lair show on a Wednesday night. It's Tangled Headphones. That's how we roll. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Look at that. Got them separated. Now I'll figure out which one I need. You know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. We cover it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact and hang out with other Pitt fans all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and our YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video, subscribe so you don't miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. 5 days a week, we have the Morning Pitt every morning. We have these weekly live shows every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. We have live post-game shows once the games actually start. And what else do we do? Oh, we have press conference videos and interviews and all kinds of practice highlights, all kinds of stuff right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You want to make sure you don't miss any of it. Like this video and subscribe. I mean, the liking part is not going to help you keep up on all of our videos, but the subscribe will. The like will just make us all feel better about ourselves for you saying that you like us. You know, and I don't know about Jim, but speaking for myself, I like it when you say you like us. Let's ask Jim. Let's bring Jim in here. Jim, do you like it when people hit the like button? Does that make you feel warm inside?
That's what I strive for every morning when I wake up.
Yeah, good.
I just want people to hit the subscribe button.
The like button. RJC Man 38 says it's 8:32. He's waiting. Hello. We've been on the air, right? Haven't I been on the air for? My counter says like 2.5 minutes.
I don't know. Maybe your opening monologue was just to me, but it was good if anyone didn't hear it.
I appreciate it. I hope everybody else heard it. I hope everybody else can hear it. I mean, we don't need to just sit here and talk to each other right now. I hope everyone else is listening to it. I mean, yeah, I guess there's probably a delay. Maybe there's like a delay or a dump button in case we start swearing and we have to like dump it or we say something inappropriate. But then again, it's a YouTube live stream. I'm pretty sure we can say anything we want. So I don't know if, but anyway, RJC Man, I hope you check it out. RJC Man's a super chatter as well. We just give a special thank you to him. I don't know what comment. Oh, here, he has something to say. Let's jump into his question first. And then I have an experiment I want to try here on the live stream after this. RJC Man says, with NIL, would you say there's a better distribution of talent? Pitt has more 4-stars this year and still ranked 26th. We're jumping right in on a heavy topic of NIL and its impact on recruiting. I don't think it's leading to a better distribution of talent. I think if Pitt ends up with more 4-stars this year, Jim, and I think you'd probably agree, I think it has to do with stability, success, and just the ongoing development of the Pitt program more than NIL. I think they've been competitive in NIL, but I'm not sure if I would necessarily say that has led to a distribution of talent. The transfer portal might end up leading to a greater distribution of talent, but I don't know if NIL. What's your take on this question?
I mean, I don't really think the NIL has had much impact on like Pitt's class being in the top 30 right now. I mean, I think they're kind of doing what they normally would have done. I mean, I guess as a broad topic overall, NIL, there may be some schools that have added more talent than they may normally not have done, I guess. I mean, I think there's some schools that have been able to use NIL to their advantage, but I don't know if that's like Pitt, and I think they're kind of doing what they normally would be doing.
Supposedly Rutgers, at least on the basketball side, has a very strong NIL program. It would be interesting to see if a program like Rutgers could like all of a sudden start getting 1 or 2 5-star football guys a year almost exclusively through NIL. You know what I mean? Sell the New York angle, sell, Jersey exposure, New York City exposure, and like a healthy dose of cash and get like 2 5-stars a year. I mean, there's good enough players in the state of New Jersey, in, Eastern PA, kind of the state of New York, DMV. I mean, they're geographically close, hotbeds of talent. Maybe that could shift the balance of power. If a school like Rutgers that should, has like somewhat proximity to some higher end guys could turn around and, land one or two guys. Maybe that would be it. I mean, I don't think we've really seen that though, have we?
No, I don't think we got to see too much of that on the football side of things. I think last year's Louisville's recruiting class, everyone was like, oh, they're probably using some NIL because like all of a sudden they had like a 4-star quarterback from California and like just all these guys from all over the place. And that it probably made an impact there because that's probably not what they would normally do.
Right. All right. Before we get to more comments and questions, I'm going to try something here because I feel like we should keep up on this and just for like regular updates. So I'm going to do a screen share here for something. Jim, let's this. Okay. So can you see that? Is that showing up there? Can you see what's on my screen?
The ACC football page.
The ACC, it's actually just ACC.com. Let's go to the ACC. Whoops. Typed it wrong. There. The ACC.com, right? So we're there. You see the page, right? And right there, can you see what I'm hovering over?
Florida State.
Florida State. All right, let's click refresh and just make sure. They're still there. Okay.
Still there.
All right. Stop sharing. I feel like we could do this every week just to make sure Florida State is still in the ACC. Like, are we sick of Florida State yet? I put a poll question out of which fan base is becoming the most insufferable, thinks most highly of themselves, Florida State, Miami, or Central Florida. And we call them Central Florida because it tends to get on their nerves. They really prefer UCF, and they get mad when you call them Central Florida, which kind of furthers the point. Who is the most insufferable blowhards right now? Florida State, Miami, or Central Florida fans?
Probably Florida State, because there is definitely that sense of we're better and we're definitely going to get into a better conference. But a lot of like the rumors and everything you hear about them is coming from their side of things. It's like stuff being leaked from Florida State. So what that tells me is that they're probably not as attractive as a school as they think they are, because it's not like national reporters are saying this conference is interested in Florida State. It's always Florida State is interested in that conference. Well, I'm sure a lot of teams are. So that kind of feels like where they are right now.
And there's like a lot of like sources, but then there's also just Florida State people, like official Florida State people. Who is it? Drew, what was his name? Drew Weatherford? Did you see that? Former quarterback who's now apparently on the board of trustees is like just talking openly about it. And the Florida State president is talking openly about it. And I've said this since the beginning. I think you and I both said this of like, when you're actually able to do something like this and make the move Florida State's talking about, you don't talk about it. You don't talk about it publicly. Maybe something leaks out like the day before, but like, nobody, like Pitt wasn't talking publicly about how they needed to get out of the Big East, in 2011. I mean, Virginia Tech and Miami and Boston College weren't talking I mean, Texas might have said something here or there, but even they weren't like screaming from the rooftops about how they had to get out of the Big 12. Like, when you're actually able to do something like this, you don't talk about it. You just do it. And it's really interesting to me that the property that would seem to have the most appeal, Clemson, the big draw, Clemson, they're not saying anything. They're just sort of sitting quietly by while Florida State just keeps talking. And the more Florida State talks, the less I believe they actually have a way to pull it all off. I mean, they're like making me less and less, or they're making themselves more and more of a joke the more they do this stuff publicly and talk as much as they are.
Yeah, I would agree. And like in the past couple of years, it always comes out in the summer. It's like USC and UCLA, it just happened. There was no lead up. There was no rumors. It just happened. And usually that's how conference realignment works. It's done beyond the athletic department. It's done at the very top of the university. So even sometimes people in the athletic department might not know what's going on. So I'm guessing with all the talk right now about Florida State is just that, just talk.
Yeah, it seems like it. And again, if they could go, they would. But as we saw on that screenshot or a screen share, and I closed the website, so I can't. No, I know I still have it open, so we can do it again. Every now and then we might intermittently just check in and make sure they're still listed on the website to make sure nothing changes while we're in the middle of it here. But it's it cracks me up. And I like how it's even being talked about now that they're willing to blow up the ACC in order to get out. It's like, man, I just don't know, especially because if they're going to blow up the ACC by leaving with 4 teams, they'd have to convince like North Carolina to also blow up the ACC with them. And even then, if those 4 teams left, pretty sure the other 10 would be like, all right, that's cool. We'll take your money. We'll continue to take the money that we have on this deal. And we'll also take all the extra money you're going to give us when you don't even play in our league anymore. I don't know. I don't know how any of this stuff ends, but I'm pretty sure it's not the way they want it to end. At least not on the timeline they want it to be on. But who knows? Tomorrow they could announce that they're leaving for the Big Ten or the SEC or whatever. But, well, that's it. I mean, the last thing on this. The other funny thing is, like, you see rumors and sources about the Big Ten, and it's always about, like, more Pac-12 teams, right? Like, there was stuff today about, like, Washington and Oregon. Like, it's not even, like, Big Ten sources are talking about Florida State. Now, maybe they're keeping it quiet, which actually would make sense. It's how things usually work. But it's not even like there are Big Ten sources saying the Big Ten is interested in Florida State. And is the SEC? I mean, I don't know. I mean, the SEC, I don't know if
I don't really know if
Florida State's right. Is Florida, how big of a draw is Florida State? But I don't know. So, yeah, Florida State will continue thinking highly of themselves. But all right, before we get into the comments and questions, Jim, it was first day of training camp today. You were down there for the practice this morning. You and I were both there at media day in the afternoon. We're both transcribing like crazy. I said I think I have 18 recorded interviews. Now, part of that was like a 2-part with Mac and Salves where I taped a little bit and then I came back and talked to him a little bit more. So I guess 17 interviews. But then again, some of those recorded interviews were like 2 players at a time. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 20. How many did you end up with? Do you know what your count was on interviews today?
About there. I think the last time that, like, I'm transcribing like all the players, I think I'm over 4,000 words and I'm not done yet. So it's been that kind of day. Actually, the podcast is giving my fingers a break.
Yeah, same here. It's a nice little retreat. You know what I do is every week at the beginning of the week I start a new document, a new Word document, and just start typing into that. So like this week I'm writing the 3-2-1 column, so that's in there. Plus an interview with Julian Duggar's trainer is in there, and then our plan for media day yesterday, and then all the quotes from today. So that document's up to about 5,000 words. And it's just going to keep getting longer as the night goes on. But tell me about I mean, that's media day, all the interviews. Tell me about this morning, though. You got a half hour, 45 minutes to watch practice. What a non-pad practice. So you got to watch special teams without shoulder pads on, and maybe a few. I mean, were there any footballs that actually went from one player to another in what you would call a forward pass, or what all did you see this morning?
For the most part, I mean, our schedule's pretty regimented. We watch them stretch. We watch them punt. We watch them kind of do a few defensive drills. But I did see the quarterbacks throwing to the wide receivers for a little bit. So that was probably the highlight of my day.
Okay. And what stood out there? Who'd you notice?
What stood out to me is just, and it's nothing new. It's something we've talked about all summer long. It's just how many true freshman wide receivers are out there, and like how many of them are gonna have to play. And I think Pat Narduzzi said as much in his press conference. He said, we're expecting at least 1, probably 2 to play and compete for that number 3, number 4 job. So he said they have a pretty good idea. It's, Means of Mumfield at the top. And after that, it's kind of anyone's guess. So when again, they're throwing against air. They're just running routes. It's not like a wide receiver versus DB. But, I mean, they look good. They're fast. They're athletic. But, I mean, there's only so much you can judge off of that.
I don't know. Did you get a chance to talk to Taekwon Underwood at media day?
I did.
Yeah, I talked to him as well, and kind of typed up some of his quotes. And he was, he said, I'm not afraid to play a freshman. I could care less what year or what grade you're in. If you're ready to play, you're ready to play, and you're going to get the opportunity. And then, as I asked him further about that, he said, any way you slice it, it's going to be some young guys, and I feel like experience is the best teacher. So throwing them out there and letting them learn, we might take our bumps early, but the end result is going to be awesome. Was his word. We'll see what constitutes awesome. We know what this passing game can sometimes look like. So we'll see what constitutes awesome. But it is an intriguing group. I thought it was interesting the way Pat Narduzzi kind of laid it out, that they had those guys here in spring, Lamar Seymour and Izzy Polk, and they looked great. And then Kenny Johnson walked in, and holy cow, and Zion Fowler made this really good catch today. Everybody seemed to be talking about, even Gavin Bartholomew was like, Zion looks great and all this stuff. I wonder, and I think we probably have talked about this at different points this summer, but like over under 1.5 freshman receivers burn their red shirt this year. In your guess?
I'd say over.
Is that an easy one? All right. What about 2.5?
I mean, I could see them not going that far. I mean, we saw last year whenever it got down to it and they only trusted 3 guys, they only played 3 guys. So like they'll do that, like if it's absolutely necessary. But I do think at least 2 of the true freshmen are going to be on the field a lot this year.
Yeah, I could see a third guy maybe playing like 4 games, you know what I mean, and staying under that cap to still redshirt, assuming everybody stays healthy and everything. But it's just, there is just such a gap between the 2 returning guys and Dejon Reynolds, and then, you know, like we've said, converted defensive back in Javonte Royal, and 2 freshmen, 2 redshirt freshmen who didn't see the field next year or last year, and then these 4 guys coming in. Do we think Kenny Johnson changes out of number 35 before the season starts? Are they actually going to have a wide receiver wearing 35?
Yeah, whenever we were handed the roster ahead of practice today, I think a few of us in the media said that the wide receiver numbers are terrible. It's not just him. It's like 27, 23. Like they're not normal wide receiver numbers. So yeah, I think they got to work on that.
0. Bub Means is wearing 0 this year. That's a weird one. John Patrician seemed miffed when I tweeted about Bub Means wearing 0. He was like, wait, what? Somebody's wearing 0? Because I don't know if John Patrician hoped to be the last Pitt player to wear 0. I didn't realize they're letting NFL wide receivers or NFL players wear 0 this year. I'd forgotten about that. So there's actually 5 NFL wide receivers who changed their number to 0. Did you see this?
I did not.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley, Paris Campbell, Marvin Jones Jr., Braxton Berrios, and Zach Pascal all changed their numbers to 0 this year. So Bub Means following the lead of Calvin Ridley et al. I think, you know, when you're watching the non-pad practice, and I saw some of the photos today, and I saw him when he came into the room. I mean, Bub Means, I mean, he looks like $1 million, right? I mean, coming off the bus, he looks like he's an all-pro wide receiver, an all-ACC wide receiver, just physique-wise, right? I mean, you saw that too.
Yeah, I mean, probably more so than they've had in the past couple of years. I mean, I think he's one of the more physically put together wide receivers they've had in the Narduzzi era. And I think towards the end of last season, he started to come alive. They started to throw some deep passes to him. I think, was it the North Carolina game? He had a couple big catches, and they let him air it out a little bit. So it wasn't there always consistently. He made a big play in the bowl game as well. But whenever his catches in the second half of the season were all deep balls. So, I mean, I think they kind of started to figure out, it's like, all right, this guy can be a matchup problem. I think early on in the season last year, he had a little problem with some drops, but I think all the tools are there for him to have a really good season, and all the opportunities are going to be there. There's no Jared Wayne this year. So I was talking to, both of those guys, and I said, have you guys taken ownership of this room? I mean, it's your room now. And they both said yes. And, of course, you say the right things, but it has to be them. Yeah. There's nobody else to lead the wide receivers other than those 2.
Yeah, if they don't, I'm not sure who's going to. It's interesting. I feel like, at Louisiana Tech, I mean, he was such a deep threat. I mean, that was like the vast majority of what he did, and the kind of routes and his average depth of target and all that. And I think they tried maybe early in the season with him last year, and it just didn't necessarily work. And then, like you said, maybe got back to it a little bit late in the year. It'd be interesting also. One of the guys, I forget who mentioned, or forget who was talking to, but they mentioned that Dejon Reynolds was working a lot out of the slot, which I think is where we saw Konate Mumfield a lot last year. I think Mumfield was getting a lot of work in the slot last year, whereas at Akron, I'm just going to look this up to make sure I don't have it backward, but I feel like at Pitt, he was working in the slot a lot, whereas at Akron, he wasn't. And obviously his stats at Akron were, more effective. He had better stats at Akron than he had at Pitt. At Pitt, he took 46% of his snaps out of the slot, whereas at Akron, that number was under 30%. And, there's a change in the level of competition, so we don't want to put it all on where he's lining up. But if a guy is more productive working outside than in the slot, then maybe you should keep him outside. And when one of the other guys on the team said that Dejon Reynolds was working a lot in the slot, I mean, maybe that's how they end up with Means and Mumfield on the outside, Reynolds in the slot, and then you mix in those freshmen however you can. I mean, they have to find a way to get effective play, because all three of those guys look like they should be good football players, right? I mean, I think we look at all three of them and say, all right, it should work. It should work better than it did last year. But obviously a lot of that's going to come down to the quarterbacks. But I don't know. I look at Mumfield, looks like he's in great shape. Looks like he's a good player. He was good at Akron. I look at Means, he looks like $1 million, like we said. I think Reynolds is a pretty solid guy, a possession guy. You mix in the freshmen there, they all have to stay healthy, but there's a chance, right? I mean, there's a chance this group could produce better than last year, or is it just all about the quarterbacks?
I don't know. I'm trying to think about Mumfield's season. He had 1 touchdown last year, and I believe Nate Yarnell was the one to throw it to him. So Pitt's starting quarterback did not throw a touchdown pass to one of his starting wide receivers. I mean, that works both ways. It's on Mumfield as well, but I mean, there was obviously something missing there last year. I mean, I think he's a good player. That last drive against West Virginia before the interception, he had a couple big catches, some third down catches. So he flashed some ability. And I think whenever you can get him downfield, I think he can be effective. I think the catches between Akron and Pitt, they weren't that far off. I think he had like 63 at Akron and 59 at Pitt, but the yardage was way different. So I think there needs to be more of an emphasis to get him the ball downfield.
Yeah, or even just like a mid-range, like the average depth of target. I'm looking at Pro Football Focus. At Akron, it was 11.2 yards. At Pitt, it was under 8. So you're looking at a 3-yard difference on average in his depth of target. I think, lining him up outside, but working, 10 to 15 yards downfield, or 12 to 17 yards downfield. That might be his sweet spot. He wasn't a big, yard after the catch guy. He averaged less than 4 yards after the catch per reception at Akron, up that number to 5 last year at Pitt. But I think he can be really solid in that way. It's another one of these things like Gavin Bartholomew, where I just wonder, there's a history of this guy producing in a certain role when you look at where he's lining up and how he's kind of being deployed. And in 2021, Gavin Bartholomew was really good, lining up a lot in the backfield with really short passes. And Konate Mumfield was really good, lining up out wide and catching passes a little bit deeper down the field. And then they sort of put them into different roles last year. And it's good for Bartholomew. He's got to develop and become a complete tight end, but you also need somebody who's going to contribute to your passing game. And last year, he didn't contribute as much as he did the year before when he's playing in a different role. Same for Mumfield. I'm really curious to see how these guys get used this year, because I mean, if I can figure this out, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but if I can figure this out, I would hope Frank Signetti could figure this out, and not just try and force something that goes against where these guys have had success in the past. Now, I asked Tim Salem about it today. I said, hey, it seems to me like Gavin did a whole lot more out of the backfield in 2021 than he did last year. And he's like, yeah, he was kind of a tight end, or he was kind of a fullback, but he had to basically learn a new position. So maybe his second year in the system, he can develop more as a tight end. But I don't know. There's so many question marks on that side of the ball, but we've talked about that all off season. When you talk to the players today, Jim, anything notable stand out in the conversations, common themes, or anybody say anything interesting that really jumped out to you?
Yeah, I'm actually, since we're talking about him, I am going to do a little feature on Means of Mumfield, because I was curious about the nickname, the Waffle House Gang. They are calling themselves the Waffle House Gang.
I mean, somebody else came up with that, right? Like, they're not the first set of receivers to refer to themselves as Waffle House, right? I mean, somebody else.
Probably somewhere along the line.
But I feel like I heard that before Pitt. 2021, Julio Jones wore cleats that said Waffle House. He has Waffle House quote. Waffle House tweets. But anyway, or Waffle House cleats, excuse me. Oh, yeah, they have the full-on Waffle House logo. I'm not going to share my screen again because this is, it'll be, I don't want to overdo it. We just want to keep an eye on Florida State. But, so what do they say about it, though? Don't give away your whole article, but what did Mumfield and Means say? Who came up with that, them or Taekwon?
I think Taekwon, because I asked him about it too. But the other thing I talked to him about, and he said the other thing about Waffle House is, besides always being open, of course, is that sometimes late at night, there could be fights at Waffle House. And whenever, if they're not catching the ball, they need to be blocking. They need to be fighting for extra yards. They need to help their team win. So Waffle House Gang has two meanings. So they really went deep with this.
That one's a stretch. I mean, they could have done something like pancakes for the blocking, but even then it's Waffle House. I don't know. That Waffle House might be the Sweet Caroline of wide receiver nicknames.
You're not on board, huh?
I mean, I don't hate it. Just like I don't hate Sweet Caroline, but they didn't come up with it, I guess. Taekwon might think he came up with it. He didn't come up with it. Maybe he came up with it during his playing days and just never talked about it. But I don't know. Doesn't really. We'll see. Anything else? Anything else notable from these guys? Who else did you talk to that was interesting to talk to?
I thought Tim Salem was pretty interesting today because I wanted to ask him not so much about this current team, but last year when Pitt had 6 guys drafted, I think 5 of them were initially recruited by Tim Salem. They came from his area. He was the offering coach. So I asked him, how cool is that, or how gratifying is that for you as a recruiter, not so much as a tight end coach, but to find these guys? And he said it was pretty cool, and it's unique. And I think I kind of caught him off guard by the question because he didn't really think of it that way. But I don't know, it was something cool to talk about.
He was kind of yelling at me. I was asking about Gavin Bartholomew's stats and how he had 7 more targets and 7 fewer receptions last year. And I thought in the moment, I was like, wait, is he yelling at me? Because at one point he was like, if we're going to go down the road of calling out the offensive coordinator and calling out the quarterback, we're not going to do that. That's not what we're going to do here. And I was like, well, is he yelling at me? I'm just asking. And then when I re-listened to the interview, yeah, he was definitely yelling at me, beyond, just regular Mountain Dew and sugar fueled yelling from Tim Salem. He was genuinely yelling at me. So I said, wow, guess I touched a nerve there. So I tried to, but I tried to dial it back a little bit, but it was a bit rough. Who's interesting, and maybe one of the more insightful, maybe the most insightful player on the team. And we didn't talk to him a ton last year, but I remember thinking this on the rare occasions when he came out, is Sibo Flemister. Do you remember Sibo from interviews last year? On the rare occasion we would talk to him, I feel like he came out after one a game or 2 games or something. Do you remember any of those?
Yeah, he's pretty good.
We would ask him questions and he really put a lot of thought into it. He would pause, he would consider himself, and then speak at length. He even today, when I asked him a question, he was like, he started saying something. He's like, I know this isn't the answer that you wanted to hear. And then went on for 2 or 3 minutes, sort of elaborating. I'm like, wow, a really smart, insightful guy. I think he has a chance to be a significant part of the running game and, could end up being a regular interview, which would certainly be interesting. I think he'd be a good voice to hear from. We're not going to get a lot of great sound bites, but we might actually get insight. You know what I mean? Which is kind of a nice thing every now and then. For all we say about Kenny Pickett, he wasn't really a great quote because he was just sort of quarterback cliches. You know what I mean? As almost a defense mechanism to not really give anything up. He was very guarded. That was the great thing about the show we did with him, is he sort of let that guard down a little bit. But he was very sort of guarded. And this is the last thing about this, and then we'll move on. Who do you think is the best or one of the best interviews on the team? Who stands out to you? When you see that we're talking to this guy, you're like, oh, good, we're going to get something good out of him. Not necessarily incendiary or controversial, but just something insightful, something interesting.
I think some of the guys that have been around are usually pretty good. I've Cradle and Zabovic today were actually both very good. I think the same thing with David Green and Devin Daniels. Well, maybe not so much Devin Daniels, but David Green was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I was actually
a smart guy.
And Shane Simon was pretty good today. I had a good conversation with him.
Yeah. Those veterans, you're right. And, when it comes to, I don't want to say incendiary or controversial, Rodney Hammond is a pretty good quote. Rodney Hammond tends to not hold back, and he will generally speak his mind no matter what. He's not really afraid of. What was it? Was it the Clemson game in 2021? Did he come out and talk after that game? And I feel like he was pretty bold in his statements that day. You talked to him today. Did he have anything good to say today?
I asked him about Matt Gonsalves being the only guy on the ACC team. I said, "Who's the snub?" He said, "My entire line." They're gonna lead me to things people don't believe I can do, or something like that. So that's how he is. He has that complex, where he has something to prove.
I am oddly, maybe not oddly, but sort of quietly confident about this run game. I was thinking about this afternoon as I was like transcribing. Like, yeah, they might not have another Izzy, but I'm pretty sure with this offensive line, I think the backs are talented enough. Like Andre Powell said, we might not have one guy who gets as many yards and touchdowns as Izzy, but collectively we'll be able to, come close or match that production. I kind of believe him. I think they're going to be fine. If this offense struggles, it won't be because they can't run the ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's kind of just how this team is built, personnel-wise. I think the coach, the offensive coordinator, recognizes that and used it last year, and I don't think it's going away. I mean, I think offensive linemen like to run block, and they have a lot of returning offensive linemen who had success doing it.
Yeah, I think between the line and the backs, I think they're going to be good. All right, real quick, we got to talk about Chris Gates Fitness. No clever segue today because there's too much other things to talk about and think about. Panther-Lair Live Show, of course, is sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. As you probably know, Chris is an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh and a huge Pitt fan, and he's planning something really cool in just 5 days. Chris is launching his one-on-one online fitness training camp on August 7th. In just 5 days from today, you can sign up. It's a 90-day fitness challenge designed to not only help you make progress now, but also develop habits that lead to maintaining your progress long-term. Make sure you visit chrisgatesfitness.com. It's Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Gates, G-A-T-E-S, fitness.com to learn more and do whatever you need to do to remember that date, August 7th. Write it down on your calendar, put an alert in your phone. If you sign up next week, you'll get access to the most personalized fitness challenge on the internet, and you can get 75% off your first month. You're going to work with Chris to create a program that's tailored to you. And Chris is going to be there every step of the way to guide and support you through the process. When you join Chris's training camp, you're going to receive a personalized training program, a customized nutrition strategy, weekly check-ins with Chris to discuss all aspects of the program, monthly challenges that are going to push you and help you develop the right habits with fitness and nutrition, prizes that are going to be awarded to select challenge winners like home gym equipment, free supplements, and more. Training camp participants are also going to gain access to private Q&As with Chris to discuss everything fitness related. Not me, Chris Gates. No other gym, coach, or trainer offers a program like this. And the timing's perfect, just like how Pitt reported the South Side for camp this week to start getting in shape and building their game plan for the season. You'll work with Chris to map out a strategy that helps you make progress during a time of year when people tend to see their health and fitness goals go in the wrong direction. Football season, tailgating, road trips, the holidays, and more make fall a really challenging time to take steps forward. But by signing up for Chris's training camp, you'll commit to enjoying all those aspects of fall in a way that supports your goals. In fact, a bunch of Panther-Lair listeners signed up for Chris's coaching program last fall, and they saw amazing results. People who signed up lost a combined 120 pounds on the scale and 34 inches off their waistline. But it's not all about losing weight. These folks jumped into their own custom strength training programs and added quite literally hundreds of pounds to their pressing, squatting, rowing, and other lifts. In fact, a handful of people who signed up last year are still working with Chris today because they enjoy the process and they're continuing to find ways to make progress and set even higher goals for their health and fitness. So don't forget that date. Chris Gates Fitness Training Camp opens on August 7th. Panther-Lair listeners get 75% off their first month of coaching. Nobody else is getting this discount. So visit chrisgatesfitness.com to learn more. Be sure to check the Panther-Lair.com message boards because Chris is going to notify you there when the applications go live. Now, Jim, before getting into some of these comments and questions here, there is some recruiting news to discuss. 3 things I think happened since the last time we got together here. Saturday, you've seen Willis announce his commitment, a 4-star running back. The commitment that we believe was made during his official visit. He finally made it public. On Monday, Julian Duggar committed to Pitt following an unofficial visit last Thursday when they basically said, yeah, Julian, we want you to commit. And so he did. And then on Tuesday, Day Farmer finally decommitted from Pitt, he announced he was committing to Central Florida, right? He never actually said, I'm decommitting from Pitt. He never thanked the Pitt coaches and all that kind of stuff. He just announced his commitment to Florida, to Central Florida, excuse me. You've seen Willis. We've expected that, right? I mean, that's been coming for a little while. Julian Duggar, I think, is the interesting guy as a local guy. And I think we've talked about him a few times in the past, but a 6'3", 205-pound quarterback who can throw the ball well and can run. I mean, it seems like there's very little downside to that. You know what I mean? Just the measurables and the size and the athleticism.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great athlete. We've talked before. He's a great basketball player. he can do a lot on the football field. Even if quarterback doesn't work out, he could probably profile as a wide receiver. And I think it's always good to, land players from a prominent local high school like Penn Hills. I think it's always good to keep those doors open. So there's very little downside about it. So I think it's a nice addition to the class because he can help in multiple ways.
Mark Shillaju had a comment on here. He said, I read somewhere, sorry, I can't remember where, that West Virginia and Wisconsin were showing interest in Julian Duggar. Did that motivate Pitt to offer him? I haven't seen that. I hadn't really heard that. I don't think it motivated them all that much. I think what happened is the end of June, he took part in their passing camp, really impressed the coaches that day, went up and got on the chalkboard with Frank Signetti for a while and impressed him in that setting. And then they spent the next few weeks thinking about it. And then they brought him down for an unofficial visit on Thursday. And by that point, they decided it was a question. They had to answer the question, like, are we comfortable with Julian Duggar being the quarterback in the class? Because I think they knew that if they ever said, Julian, we will take you, he would commit. So it wasn't a question of can they get him? It was a question of, are they comfortable with him being the guy in the class? And after thinking about it for the month of July, I think Signetti decided yes. I don't think they were under any real pressure. I haven't heard much about West Virginia and Wisconsin. I don't even know if those schools need quarterbacks in their classes. I just think they decided, yes, we're comfortable with it. And I don't think it reflected as much on Trevor Jackson or anything like that. I don't know if they were going to get Jackson or not, but to me, I think they just had to decide if they were good with it, and they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Duggar, they've liked him since about, or have been aware of him since he was about in 8th grade. Like, he's not anyone new, and they've kind of been going back and forth with this for years. So I think it just finally came, and they were good with it. So this isn't anything new.
Yeah. Looking real quick, Wisconsin has a 4-star quarterback committed in this class, and West Virginia, bringing up their commitment list here, has a 3-star quarterback committed in this class. So I don't know if either school was necessarily desperate for quarterbacks in the 2024 recruiting class. And that's actually kind of something that I think is relevant as we talk about Duggar. Like West Virginia's quarterback committed in June, like June 25th. Wisconsin's quarterback was their first commitment in the class. He committed on Christmas Eve last year. And, sometimes when people talk about Duggar, they say, well, he went to all these prospect camps in June. Why didn't he get an offer from any of these schools? I think part of the reason is a lot of schools had their 2024 quarterback commitment already filled. You only usually take one quarterback. And so unless the school was looking for 2, they probably weren't going to be all that interested. I think he didn't earn a lot of offers off of his junior film. I think he did a lot of work this past offseason to improve his mechanics and his footwork and his drops. And then, but by the time he was able to show off that progress, a lot of schools already had a quarterback. I really feel like with Duggar, there's a confluence of events. Those things I just talked about, plus the fact that he's left-handed, I think that turns off some schools. Some coordinators are turned off by a left-handed quarterback. They didn't throw the ball a ton at Penn Hills. He had 130 passing attempts last year. Is just not, they were a one-dimensional offense. I think it's a whole combination of factors that maybe led to this guy slipping through the cracks, ultimately to Pitt's benefit.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a degree to that, and and like we said, if it doesn't work out at quarterback, it's not like the end of the road for him. He's such a good athlete; he'll figure something out.
He is. Have you seen some of these videos of him dunking alley-oops and stuff like that? I mean, there aren't a lot of quarterback prospects who can do that. Now, I mean, you're recruiting a quarterback, not a basketball player, but it speaks to the athleticism for sure. So like we mentioned, Day Farmer decommitted. Brock Madonic asks, with one receiver now in the class, where does Pitt go? Also, how many more players will they take in this class? As far as receiver, I mean, that's the thing. I don't know if Rick Darius, Day Farmer is going to be a great college player or not, but they needed this to be another really good receiver class. I mean, signing 4 guys last year, I think that was great. I really like the 4 guys they got, but they have dug themselves such a hole at wide receiver that one class wasn't going to fix it all. I mean, they needed back-to-back, maybe to back really good receiver classes, and losing the 4-star guy out of it, I mean, it makes it look like it's going to be pretty tough to get a really good receiver class in 2024. I mean, I'm not even sure, like, who are we even talking about at this point? Who's even on the radar as other receiver option. All the guys they hosted for visits have committed elsewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be kind of like an Izzy Polk situation where someone you kind of find late. But, to answer the second part of this question, I mean, if everyone stays committed now, they add the one other player we think they're going to add. I mean, they're not going to add that many more players to this class. I mean, they probably need to add 2 receivers and a defensive end and maybe call it a day.
Yeah.
Like 3 more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking through the visit list. I mean, yeah, all these guys are committed. And we could go through the offer sheet, but that's a little bit more of an arduous task. I mean, but they need somebody. I mean, they just can't come out of this year with only one receiver in this class. It's just not. Yes, you signed 4 last year, but you were in such a hole. The 2000. If you go back through the classes, and we've done this a bunch of times. I mean, if we let me bring up the commitment list here, because it's always just such a. I mean, I don't want to call it a disaster. That's a bit of an overreaction, but I mean, 2019, they signed Jared Wayne and Will Gibson. Well, those guys are both gone. 2020, they signed Jordan Addison and Jalen Barton and Aiden Henningham. Barton and Addison are gone, and Henningham's playing linebacker. 21, they signed, I think they got Jaden Bradley that year and Miles Alston. They're both gone. 2022, Addison Copeland and Shea Wabuko, who knows what those guys are going to be. They didn't play as freshmen last year. So you got like 4 classes in a row that have produced a linebacker and 2 guys who have never set foot on the field. That's, you're going to need more than one 4-man class to make up for that. And you definitely can't come out of this year with a 1-man class with a Wildcat quarterback as your one receiver in the group. Now they'll find somebody else, but waiting until the end of the cycle and getting an Izzy Polk, like you said, in December, that doesn't seem like it's going to cut it either. I mean, they've got to be proactive here and try and go poach some guys from another recruiting class. But even then, and this has been mentioned on the message boards, you're not exactly touting a highly productive passing offense here. It's not, if you were throwing the ball all over the field, it might be a little bit easier to try to steal somebody, but I'm not sure they're really in position to do that. I don't, am I overreacting here? Am I making this situation more dire than it actually is? Because it feels pretty friggin' dire.
Yeah, I mean, they need more than one wide receiver. There's just no way around it. And I don't know, there is nobody like I can point to that's uncommitted that they are in on, because they hosted who they hosted. I mean, and when I look at their offer sheet, it's still kind of cluttered from Brennan Marion. There's like 19 wide receivers that are uncommitted, but I don't think they really have offers from Pitt, even though we list them with offers from Pitt. So it is, they're going to have to be proactive. Like you said, they're going to have to find somebody. And yeah, they might not be in a great position. I mean, I guess they can tout, hey, Jared Wayne had a 1,000-yard season. I think a lot of kids still resonate Jordan Addison with Pitt, even though he didn't play in this offense. Whenever Pitt offers a wide receiver and you ask them, hey, what do you know about Pitt? Oh, I know Jordan Addison. So that can still like maybe catch you a little bit of slack. I don't know, but yeah, they need to be proactive.
Yeah. TRR asks, is the rumor of the Big Ten being interested in 4 Pac-12 schools good for the ACC at this time? If there's any impact on the ACC, yeah, I mean, kind of. I would say kind of, because one, if that means that the Big Ten is not going to try and get ACC schools, that's good. 2, if that leads to somehow, the ACC ending up being a bi-coastal conference and absorbing some of those old Pac-12 schools. I said they should call themselves the Coastal Conference just to maintain the history and, proud legacy of the Coastal Division. Just change the name of the whole conference. Like if they add, whoever, Oregon State, Washington State, whoever you want to add there. But I don't know if the Big Ten poaches more from the Pac-12, impact on the ACC.
I'm with you. I think it's good because the Big Ten, probably more so than the SEC, would be interested in the ACC properties. There's not much some of the ACC schools can really add to the SEC. We said that earlier with Florida State. They already have Florida.
Yeah.
So yeah. I guess that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Swim Boyd asks, here's a position we never talked about, the depth. Who's the backup morning Pitt host, and are they ready for the job? Swim Boyd trying to kick me out of the morning Pitt? Is that how you take that? Is that how you're reading that? Or is it just, an emergency situation?
I think an emergency situation, or I mean, I didn't watch the morning Pitt today. Are you slipping at all?
Maybe. I usually feel like I'm slipping. I mean, what Well, if you were the backup host, what would you talk about on tomorrow's Morning Pit?
Media day.
Crap, that's what I did. Darn it. Jim's coming for my job. Let's see. Josh Newark is going down fine. I'll put this up here. He's going down a long path. The ultimate solution is save Pitt. I already established the link to KSM and the Saudi money. Reach out to contacts and get them to invest some serious money into the ACC, Live Golf, and ACC on the CW, sponsored by the royal family of Saudi Arabia. Jim, you have anything to say about that?
You know, I know most Division I schools would not turn down money from anywhere.
Yeah. What I mean is
they're not above it.
Is Saudi money going to get involved in college football? Is that the next step in this whole thing?
You know, the way the past 2 years have gone, nothing would surprise me.
Yeah. Homer Simpson says, when it comes to NIL, it's simple. Pay up or get left behind. That's life, brother. Somebody needs to tell Pat Narduzzi, get with it or get lost, brother. He doesn't win an ACC championship in the next 3 years. People will want him gone anyways. Should have added another brother at the end of that.
Yeah.
You know, he hit a couple brothers in this first comment. You know, I felt good. I felt like I was reading like a Hulk Hogan thing. It was cool. Pat Narduzzi has embraced NIL as much as he wants to, you know, and probably even maybe a little more than he wants to. But he's accepted that it's part of it. He's embraced that it's part of it. And he has, it's part of Pitt recruiting on the football and basketball fronts. It's part of Pitt recruiting. So, you know, Narduzzi's comments, we talked about that last week, right? We talked about the salary cap thing. Mm-hmm. I think, and he even talked more about it today. He said, I want them to make as much money as they can and all this kind of stuff. I probably would have asked him more. Well, I'll probably wait for one of those Thursday afternoons when we're sitting around the conference table and ask him questions then, when we can get a little more in depth on it. But he's embraced it as much as he wants, or probably a little more than he would like. Josh Newark asks, is there a chance politicians get involved to prevent the super conferences from ruining college football for the have-nots and those that get left behind? Maybe antitrust legislation, or no chance? I am not good with understanding antitrust legislation and how it relates to sports leagues. Sometimes I think I know, and then somebody says something or does something and I say, oh, I guess I didn't really know that. I generally think regulation's a good thing. There just needs to be some governing body that can do it. And I don't know if that's the NCAA. You know, I don't know if like there's a part of me that thinks that if there's Power 5 autonomy or Power 2 autonomy or whatever it is, they could come up with some real regulations that could make it actually work. I don't see the governing body in place right now to make a regulation that sticks. I actually saw something today that the NCAA just tasked its NIL task force with coming up with new legislation by January 24 or something like that. I just don't know if the NCAA is the group to institute the regulations that need to happen.
I agree. I think the NCAA, like, if it ever grew a backbone, that they could be the ones. But right now, the schools are telling the NCAA what they're doing and not the other way around. So it's not a good spot.
Yeah. I feel like the leadership or the power is in the conferences and the conference leadership. That's where, which is ultimately, you know, sort of driven by some of the schools, but that's what I kind of, that's what I think. I just don't know about the NCAA or the government, but somewhere there has to be someone who puts some order to this thing. There has to be an adult in the room. Noah Frederick says, have people come around yet on Duggar? Love seeing a Penn Hills guy commit to Pitt, and it's always cool seeing Whitfield quarterbacks committing to Pitt, even if the last one didn't work out great. Who's the last one? Danucci? Is that who we're talking about here?
They have a Whitfield
scholarship guy. This year. What's that?
They have a Whitfield quarterback this year.
That's true. We'll see how that one works out. I think there's a mixed response to Duggar. I think there are some Pitt fans who just say, oh, this guy is big and he's a great athlete and he's got a big arm and he's local. That's great. You know, I hope it works out. You know, and then there are some who say, well, he only had these offers and they only waited until they missed on everybody else. Why, it's not a good, it's not a good pickup. I don't know. I think I see the upset. I think I see why they did it and why they took him. And I don't know. Like, I understand some of the negative reaction, but to me, it's a little bit over the top. I don't know. I don't know about you.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a couple weeks, and I guess I was one of the ones to not be fully around on Duggar. I was thinking maybe they should wait a little bit and see if some other options come open. But it is what it is at this point. I mean, that's who they're rolling with, and I'm with you. I see the upside. There's a lot to like, but there's a lot to be skeptical of.
I also think, I mean, the world of recruiting quarterbacks has changed so much with the portal. And I've been saying this for a few years now. And people say, well, you can't live on transfer quarterbacks all the time. And yeah, you don't want to live on 1 year transfer quarterbacks all the time, but like a Christian Veillere type of transfer, you kind of can live on that. You kind of can. If you get that guy who comes in with 3 years of eligibility left and just do that every 2 years, you can do that, and you still recruit high school guys, but you don't need to get that surefire bona fide future starter. You can get a guy who like Duggar who might take a few years to develop, but he's got a lot of great physical tools. So it's somebody called him a lottery ticket. Well, maybe that's not the worst thing. You know what I mean? Like, take a guy like that while you continue to work the portal every year. No, you don't want to keep getting Keaton Slovises and Max Browns and Phil Dracovics who only have 1 year left. But if you can get like a Veillere, and those guys are going to be out there. Those guys are going to be out there every year. There's going to be second and third year quarterbacks who are out there who've got a bunch of eligibility left. I mean, you might as well devote as much time to that as you do to the high school kids, because at least with like a guy like Veillere, he's been in college for a while. He kind of knows what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, say some of the quarterbacks they're recruiting right now. Like, what if Trevor Jackson, say he commits to Ole Miss and hates it in 1 year? There's still a lot. You still liked him not as a prospect, and just 1 year away, you're still going to go after him. So the portal always can save you a little bit.
Yeah.
Or a lot.
I think so. Especially at that position. I mean, that position, because so many guys transfer, there's such a preponderance of guys who leave their schools because they're not getting a chance. I mean, somebody like Nick Patty and Nate Yarnell, those guys are the exceptions. I mean, they're sticking around as long as they have in backup roles. Homer Simpson, I mean, we always should have a uniform conversation at some point. Says, I know the old people will complain, but we need a Pitt script, black and gold uniform, same uniforms, just black and gold. I'm not into it. Even the way basketball did it, the black with the yellow numbers and stuff, I'm not into it. Jim, the kids would like it, probably.
I mean, the basketball versions are actually pretty terrible.
Yeah, but are we just old?
Maybe, but like they could do better than like the Pitt, like the just giant P on the shirt.
Yeah, they didn't need the giant P. It could be like a full Pitt script or a script Panthers or something like that. You're on board with like those old, like the yellow ones they wore a few years ago with like Xavier Johnson, right?
I think those should be the full-time uniforms.
Yeah, it might be a bit much for a full game. Looking at that every game, I like white. I like white at home. I think white is a classic basketball look. I still just wish baseball teams just wore white at home and white with the mascot name at home, gray like Major League Baseball teams, gray with the city name on the road. Like, that's maybe it's just because it's what I grew up with, but I mean, I like that sort of standard thing. I like basketball teams wearing white at home and color on the road. I don't mind a color on color game every now and then, but I think you just stick with what works. And I mean, I don't know, but kids would probably really get into like black uniforms, right? For football. I mean, that's probably a given, right?
For the longest time, whenever they hosted recruits, what uniform were they trying on? The steel.
Oh uniforms. God, the Steel Panther.
But so many kids took their photo shoot in those. Like that's what they were drawn to, not like the normal Pitt uniforms. So
what was worse, the Steel Panther or those pro combat uniforms in 2010?
I think Steel Panther was worse.
Really?
Yeah, at least those ones had blue.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I liked the gray Panther logo on the helmets. They were terrible, but the pro combat uniforms were awful. I mean, those were really bad. That's a tough call. Might have to make that a poll question sometime. What's worse, the Steel Panther or the pro combat? Let's see here. People are arguing about whether or not RJC Man 38 should continue watching the podcast, but that's okay. Dan Juby wants to know, with wide receiver depth short, will the tight ends hopefully be utilized more? Gavin Bartholomew has potential to put up 2012 Mike Shanahan numbers, in my opinion. I don't see anything quite that big. I thought Narduzzi, talked about the tight ends, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, he seemed to believe that they had some athleticism there.
We got a Jake Renda shout out at his introductory press conference.
I mean,
that doesn't happen. I don't know if it's real, but
yeah, does that bode well or not? Sometimes like they'll talk up a guy and the talk of training camp, and then they never see the field. You know what I mean? There's
been a few.
It's like the Ed. What's the name of that award in the spring? Most improved player. Ed Conway. All I could think was Ed Cooley, and I didn't think that Pitt would name their most improved player of spring award after the Providence basketball coach. So
Georgetown basketball coach.
He'll always be Providence to me. Paul Moore, what do you expect the pass run balance to be with this roster? I mean, probably what it was last year, right?
I mean, they all talking to a lot of the players today, they said they're going to throw it a lot more. They think they can air it out more. Whether that happens, again, it all comes back to the quarterback. If the quarterback can throw the ball effectively, they'll probably throw the ball more.
Yeah, I mean, but
what was their distribution last year?
Yeah, I'd have to look it up, because you have to get into like sacks and like what the stats actually ended up being. I'm going to bring it up I mean, just total sort of raw numbers. They had 521 rushing attempts, 391 passing attempts. So that's a pretty drastic difference, right? I mean, that's 912 plays, 521 were rushing attempts. And some of them are going to be sacks, but what's the percentage on that? 521 divided by 912. That's like 57%. I mean,
I think it can be more 50-50, probably. Because, I mean, you don't have, like we already talked about, you don't have a Banacanda. Like, they're still going to run the ball. They're still going to distribute carries, but you don't have, like, that one guy that's definitely going to get 25 touches a game every single game. So I think there might be more situations where they throw a little bit more, but I'm still kind of waiting to see it.
Yeah. Samuel Dazuka wants to know why the pictures behind you aren't evenly spaced out. The gap between the left two is much smaller than the gap between the right two.
So there's 2 and 2, and then there's
so
there's actually 4. So there's actual symmetry here.
You should set yourself up in the gap between the two sets of 2.
Like, what do we got over here?
You have to slide to your left, I think.
See, there's 2 over there.
Right, yeah, you got to be in the middle of that.
Yeah, I'll work on that for next time.
All right. Let's see here. Scrolling down to see what other comments and questions we have here. Here you go. Dr. Acula says, besides Drake May and Jordan Travis, who will certainly be problems, which quarterback is most likely to give this defense fits this season? Jim, you've been scouting out all the Pitt opponents here over the last few weeks. Who stands out to you? Who's the other quarterback you're watching out for?
I mean, I've kind of like called people out for being trendy with Duke, but like actually looking over Duke, I think Riley Leonard's pretty good. He has a lot of good weapons. I just think overall they have a pretty good offense. Like, his top 2 receivers are back. They had 4 players rush for over 400 yards. So they have a lot of ways they can beat you. And Riley Leonard had 3 touchdown passes against Pitt last year, and Pitt needed like a late scoop and score just to beat them.
Right.
So, I mean, Riley Leonard's mobile, and he's going to be his second year as a starter, and he has all his weapons back. So, I mean, I think that could definitely be. And I mean, Sam Hartman's good. Like, he could definitely be a problem.
And he'll have more talented. I mean, he had some talented receivers, but he'll have the best group of, he'll have the best group of playmakers around him that he's had, better than he had at Wake Forest. Garrett Schrader, does he scare you with the big Aronde Gadsden or whatever that guy's name is?
I mean, Pitt was, I don't want to say lucky, but I mean, they were fortunate they didn't have to face him last year, because I guess Syracuse was kind of good when he was on the field, and their offense was pretty terrible without him. So he definitely will make an impact.
Yeah. Who's West Virginia's guy? I forget. Who did they pick up?
Now I'm blanking.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It was a transfer, right? They're going with another transfer this year. Didn't they get a transfer quarterback, or they have?
I don't know if they were going to go with that, like Nico, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We probably should plan. We need. I have to go back and read your preview of West Virginia. It's been a couple weeks since you wrote it, so
yeah, it's been, and I've written like 10 since. So
yes, you've been following a lot of these guys. All right, well, it's 9:30, Jim, so we're going to you and I both get back to transcribing all of the things that all of the interviews today. But we appreciate everybody who jumped in with the comments and the questions in the live chat tonight during the stream. Of course, we have the morning pit the next few days, and every day of the week we'll have the live stream again next Wednesday night, unless something comes up. But make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, for all the Pitt sports news, and like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Jim, thanks for your time tonight. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to the live stream, and we will catch up with you. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, before we go. Wait. Oh, we had one more. Willett Harris. He's a super chatter. He got paid on Monday, and his wife got paid today, so he came through with the big 2 bills. Sir,
much appreciated.
We salute you. We salute you. I see it. I see. He just said, I had a super chat. Oh, I see it. We got you, buddy. All right. Thank you, Willett Harris. Thank you, Jim Hammett. Thank you, everyone else in the live stream. Have a great night. We will talk to you tomorrow on the morning pit, and we'll be back again next Wednesday for another live stream. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.